Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I direct my question without notice to the Prime Minister. Is the Prime Minister aware of the recent ABS report which shows that Australia is, per capita, one of the great waste-producing nations of the world? Why does the government's waste strategy, which the Prime Minister launched this week, fail to address the fundamental cause of excessive waste production, which is that the benefits of producing waste are mainly private, while the costs of waste disposal are mainly public? Will the Prime Minister move to eliminate public subsidies for waste production and adopt the rational approach of requiring manufacturers of disposable materials to meet the costs of that disposal?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I don't think any government in Australian history has been more conscious of the environment than this one, and that is why it received its due plaudits in the corridors of the conference in Rio for the positions it's taken, both in terms of the environment, the living in the natural environment in Australia, and its path-breaking reforms on environmental-related issues. Now, early this week, Mr. Speaker, I had the pleasure of launching with Mrs. Kelly the government's response to waste management, and that a waste management strategy, which is about getting Australians focused up on the problems of waste and their management, and first of all diminishing the volume of waste which comes from packaging, etc., and at the same time making the conservation effort to collect it and recycle it and use it again. And I think I can say to the Honourable Member for North Sydney, Mr. Speaker, that we're having some substantial success. We are now recycling nearly all of the newspapers that are in this country. The fact is that there's been now quite substantial growth in the recycling of newspapers, as newspapers are now being picked up at central points and recycled into pulp, which is adding substantially to our stock, our pulp capacity. And even though we are not at the point where it's all being recycled and collected, the fact is industry is now making a greater effort to do it. And that I think is very encouraging. There is now much more consciousness about waste in packaging, which I think both companies and the consumers are now focusing upon. And I think when we see the response to campaigns like Clean Up Australia, and the response by ordinary Australians in going out playing a role in those clean-up campaigns and being conscious of the environment and waste management and litter and all that comes with it, that there is, I think, as a backdrop to good public policy, a decent sort of level of understanding by the community about these things. I think all these things are about community understanding, but I think if the government were to take the sort of legislative approach of trying to penalise industries or businesses which have over the long run of industrial development produced new forms of packaging and try and stigmatise and penalise them as carrying the burden of it, rather than in fact see them as part of a change in culture and attitudes, I think that is the way to go. And we are going this way, and I think all of the authorities, that is the state authorities and the suburban and urban authorities, as well as the big waste management outfits like the Sewerage and Water and Drainage Boards of Australia, are focusing on the question of air and water cleanliness and removing the problem of large waste dumps around Australia, the problem of trying to find landfill opportunities to take volumes of waste where in fact the problem is the creation in the first place. So I assure the Honourable Member for North Sydney, Mr. Speaker, that we will continue to be vigilant about this, but we'd rather encourage people into a better policy rather than coerce them into it or penalise them with legislation, for which I think there'll be a reaction and won't work. If you don't change the attitudes, you won't change the problem. But this is a real problem for the world, for the developed countries. The greatest problem, of course, the United States, but substantially a problem for us, and it needs to be tackled and dealt with without fear or favour over a considerable period of time.
The Honourable